as Paddy finally acknowledges his dad needs professional help in Emmerdale tonight. Fans are asking all over again, what exactly is wrong with Beowulf? Bear has been suffering for quite some time, well before he was taken and held captive by Ray Walters. But that seems to have been forgotten about entirely. Is counselling really going to help? Or does Bear need more than that? It was back in May 2025 that Beowulf had begun acting oddly. He was taking everything personally, believed his family no longer wanted him, and was violently lashing out. At the time, Emmerdale show boss Laura Shaw teased something big was coming for Bear. He's going off screen for a little while, she said. He'll go missing, and when he comes back what you'll see is a very different Bear in a very different situation. After another fight with Paddy, and saying some horrible things, Bear left Emmerdale in July saying he was going to stay with a friend. Only Bear never arrived. It was November when we found out Bear had in fact been living with Ray Walters, being held as a slave and made to work on the farm. But Bear had been brainwashed into believing Ray was taking care of him, and was a good man. In January, we thought Bear was dead. Ray's evil mum had ordered Bear killed, and told Ray it had happened slowly and painfully. We saw Bear's feet, but never actually saw his body. And during flashback week as Ray's killer was unveiled, we discovered Bear wasn't dead at all. In fact, he had escaped to come and find his son Paddy. Only what he found was Ray about to kill Paddy with a hammer. So he stepped in and began strangling Ray. As Bear said he just wanted it to stop, Ray became lifeless. Bear had accidentally killed him. Paddy and Dylan did not want Bear to go down for murder after all he'd been through, so covered up the killing. They then locked Bear up and pretended he was still missing. Bear got out, and so Paddy has since been keeping a watchful eye on him, not allowing any visitors, cutting police interviews short, and not letting him get any professional help. Tonight, Wednesday, February 11th, Bear has another breakdown, and Paddy finally acknowledges counselling is the only way to help him deal with his trauma. However, fans have been debated whether counselling is actually the only thing Bear needs. What about an actual diagnosis for a start? Writing on social media, viewers have begun to wonder whether a diagnosis of what triggered the whole episode in the first place is to come. As well as the trauma Bear has gone through, whatever made him have a breakdown last year needs to be addressed too. One wrote, "Is Bear ever going to get a diagnosis on his state of mind / possible dementia/CTE? Just seems like he should have had a thorough physical by now." Last year fans worried Bear had CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a condition which can be a result of repeated traumatic brain injuries, common in those who sustain injuries from sports. As a former wrestler, Bear would have had plenty of knocks to the head over the years, which could have triggered the condition. Other suggestions included dementia or depression. Another agreed. He wasn't right before he went missing. He needs to see Liam or Manpreet. Someone else wasn't quite so understanding. How much longer have we got to endure this regurgitated Bear? Wouldn't be so bad if we actually knew how, and where he lost his brain cells. What's actually wrong with Bear? Queried another. I thought it was the meds Ray was giving him, but has he got dementia or something? So will Emmerdale give us an explanation for this? Let's hope so, because Bear needs help more than ever right now. As Emmerdale opens on a cold, grey February morning, the village feels quieter than usual. Not peaceful, just heavy. The kind of silence that settles when everyone knows something is wrong, but no one quite knows how to say it out loud. At the centre of it all is Beowulf, a man once larger than life, now reduced to a shadow of himself, and a son who is finally being forced to confront a truth he's been avoiding for months. Chapter 1. Cracks that were always there. Long before Ray Walters entered Beowulf's life, long before chains, captivity, and brainwashing, something inside Bear had already begun to fracture. Back in May 2025, those closest to him noticed the shift. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small things. A sharp word here, a sudden outburst there. Bear, once loud but warm, began taking everything personally. A joke felt like an insult. A disagreement became proof that his family no longer wanted him. Paddy tried to laugh it off. That was his way. Bear had always been intense. A former wrestler, a man who had spent decades throwing his body into rings and arenas, pain was nothing new to him. Mood swings? He chalked them up to age, pride, maybe even fear of slowing down. But then the violence came. A slammed door. A smashed mug. A look in Bear's eyes that Paddy didn't recognize. Wild, wounded, desperate. And underneath it all, paranoia. The belief that he was being pushed out, replaced, forgotten. When Emmerdale boss Laura Shaw teased that something big was coming for Bear, viewers sensed it too. This wasn't just a bad patch. This was the beginning of something darker. Chapter 2, Going Missing. The final argument between Paddy and Bear in July was brutal. Words were hurled that neither of them could take back. Bear said things he would later struggle to even remember saying. Cruel, cutting things that struck right at Paddy's deepest fears. I don't need you, Bear spat. Never did. He left that day saying he was going to stay with a friend. Paddy watched him go, anger still burning hot in his chest. He didn't chase after him. He didn't stop him. That decision would haunt him. Bear never arrived at his friend's place. Days turned into weeks. Worry set in. Then fear. When the truth finally emerged in November, that Bear had been living under Ray Walters' control, forced to work like a slave on a remote farm, it felt unreal. Worse still was the revelation that Bear hadn't known he was being abused. Ray had broken him down so completely that Bear believed he was being cared for. Federal housed. Protected. The brainwashing was total. Chapter 3. A Death That Wasn't. January brought the darkest twist of all. Ray's mother ordered Bear killed. The scene was chilling. Her calm cruelty as she described his slow, painful death. Viewers saw Bear's feet. Not his face. Not his body. Hope flickered, even then. And during flashback week, that hope paid off. Bear wasn't dead. He had escaped. Bruised, starving, terrified, but alive. All he wanted was to get back to his son. What he found instead was Ray, hammer raised, about to kill Paddy. Bear didn't think. He reacted. He grabbed Ray from behind, his arms locking around the man's throat. Later, Bear would say the same thing again and again. I just wanted it to stop. Ray stopped moving. Ray was dead. It was an accident. But it was also a killing. Chapter 4, The Cover-Up. Paddy and Dylan made a decision that night. A terrible, desperate decision born of love and fear. Bear had already suffered enough. Prison would destroy him. So they covered it up. They hid the truth. They locked Bear away, telling the world he was still missing. Paddy told himself it was temporary. Just until Bear was stable. Just until things made sense again. But Bear didn't get better. He deteriorated. Chapter 5, A Son in Denial. Since Bear's return, Paddy has been controlling everything. No visitors. No extended police interviews. No doctors. No counselors. He tells himself he's protecting his dad. Really, he's protecting himself. From the guilt, from the truth, from the possibility that something was wrong with Bear long before Ray ever touched him. Tonight, that illusion finally shatters. Bear has another breakdown. Worse than the last. Confusion floods his face. His anger flips to despair in seconds. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what day it is. Paddy watches, helpless, as his father unravels. And for the first time, he says the words out loud. He needs help. Proper help. Chapter 6. Is counseling enough? Counseling is the word Paddy clings to. It feels safe. Manageable. Temporary. But fans aren't convinced, and neither, deep down, is Paddy. Because Bear wasn't right before Ray. The captivity didn't start this. It only amplified something that was already there. On social media, the questions flood in. Is it dementia? Depression? CT? As a former wrestler, Bear endured countless blows to the head. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a real possibility. A degenerative brain condition linked to repeated head injuries, known to cause aggression, paranoia, memory loss, and emotional instability. Viewers remember the early signs. So does Paddy, now, whether he wants to or not. Chapter 7. The questions that won't go away. One fan writes, is Bear ever going to get a diagnosis? Dementia? CT? He should have had a full physical by now. Another adds, he wasn't right before he went missing. He needs to see Liam or Manpreet. Others are harsher, their patience worn thin. But even their frustration points to the same truth. This story needs answers. And Bear needs more than good intentions. Chapter 8. Facing the Truth. As Paddy sits alone that night, the weight of everything finally crashes down on him. Loving someone doesn't mean hiding the truth. Protecting someone doesn't mean locking them away from the world. For months, Paddy has been fighting the wrong enemy. Bear doesn't just need counseling. He needs diagnosis, treatment, accountability, compassion, and above all, honesty. Chapter 9. What comes next? Whether Emmerdale will finally name what is wrong with Bear Wolf remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. This story isn't just about trauma from captivity or guilt over an accidental killing. It's about a man whose mind has been slipping for far longer than anyone wanted to admit. And a son who is finally learning that love sometimes means letting professionals step in. Chapter 10. A Hope for Healing. Bear Wolf is broken. but he is not beyond help. If Emmerdale does this story justice, the road ahead will be painful, honest, and necessary. Because Bear doesn't need to be hidden anymore. He needs answers. And right now, more than ever, he needs help.